The collapse of Israel is inevitable, and I'm going to tell you why. And I'm going to start by talking about the United States of America, specifically September 11 of 2001. Americans of a certain age knew exactly where they were standing when they first heard the news about 9/11. I certainly remember where I was on multiple moments during that day. Later the next week, I remember somebody telling me that 9/11 was our generation's Pearl Harbor. And that analogy, that reference was very important and very intentional. December 7th of 1941, a date which will live in infamy. And the idea that on that day, the Japanese had awakened a sleeping giant that was now going to single-handedly clean up the mess that nobody else could clean up. And from that moment forward, everything that America did in World War II was all for the greater good. The ultimate expression of the United States of America doling out violence for the greater good was, of course, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the ultimate expressions of the idea that, hey, that's what you get when you mess with America. When you mess with us, we destroy you. Why? Because that's what God wants. God chose us as the shining city on a hill, the beacon of freedom and democracy around the world. So when you mess with us, you mess with God. Therefore, if you mess with us, we must destroy you. God commands us to protect that which He has anointed. Therefore, if you mess with us and we do not destroy you, we would be violating the word of the Lord. And that's not cool, man. It is very important for me to reference a video entitled Israel Can't Stop by the Mizrahi Perspective, which is a big inspiration for my recording today. The video discusses the relationships between American exceptionalism and Israeli exceptionalism. And it talks about how exceptionalism, in his words, is, quote, always used to do evil. And so my take on that is as follows. If exceptionalism is always used to do evil, then evil is good in the minds of those who consider themselves to be exceptional. But there is a serious flaw with the mindset of exceptionalism as follows. Because exceptionalism is used to make the evil into the good, you can predict what people who consider themselves exceptional are going to do, because you know that they cannot help but commit the most heinous crimes imaginable. They cannot help it because they are compelled to do it. They believe they are commanded to do the most evil things imaginable. And it's very important to say that that kind of exceptionalism existed before the United States of America itself existed. It's the same exceptionalism that justified European colonization writ large. And the colonization and subjugation of the so-called Americas were just an expression of that. The large-scale erasure of indigenous peoples was just an expression of that. Manifest Destiny was just an expression of that. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were just an expression of that. The My Lai massacre was just an expression of that. Donald Trump pretending that the United States of America single-handedly won World War II is just an expression of that. In other words, these expressions of exceptionalism are not new at all. They predate the United States of America itself. This provides information that anti-oppression practitioners around the world can use as follows. We know that the people who consider themselves exceptional will always be shocked and outraged when the people they have subjugated decide to fight back. We know that the people who consider themselves exceptional will never look in the mirror for a reason as to why they may have been attacked. They will always point the blame at the people they have already subjugated. They will say things like, hey, they hate us for our freedom. They're just jealous. They wish they could be us. They are uniquely evil because God commanded us to subjugate them. They're supposed to shut up and take it. They're not supposed to fight back. So their resistance is not just an affront to us, it's an affront against God himself. Therefore, we have no choice but to punish them with overwhelming force. And we will be victorious, just like the United States was in World War II. And I will say it again, this is information that anti-oppression practitioners around the world can use, because we know it's not World War II anymore. It's not the 1940s anymore. And keep in mind, it was only 20 to 30 years later that the United States lost in Vietnam against an army that had much fewer weapons, much less money, because in the real world, there are no exceptional people. Therefore, exceptionalism leads to self-annihilation. In the year 2002, American country music star Toby Keith released a song called Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue. Again, if you're of a certain age, you know what I'm about to say. There's a single line in that song that caused a kerfuffle, and the line was as follows: "We'll put a boot in your ass, it's the American way." It's just one line in a whole song that expresses that same sentiment. The sentiment of, if you mess with us, we will destroy you. Just like we did in World War II, just like we did with Manifest Destiny, just like we did when Columbus, our man, sailed the ocean blue in 1492. Oh, and by the way, yeah, we lost in Vietnam, but we're gonna make up for that right now. And we know what happened with that. We know about that joke. The USA spent 20 years and $1 trillion in Afghanistan to replace the Taliban with the Taliban. But that so-called joke says so much about how exceptionalism leads to self-annihilation. Because we see how 9/11 compelled the USA to begin to destroy itself, or continue to destroy itself if you prefer. Now you may rightfully say, hey Chris, the USA still exists. Yeah, it does still exist. Would you say it's healthy? You think Donald Trump is a sign of a healthy nation? You think locking people up with no due process and sending them to a prison in El Salvador is a sign of a healthy nation? You think blatant and easily fact-checked lies by the thousands from the government is a sign of a healthy nation? Do you think the USA releasing a video of its own extrajudicial killing of 11 people on a boat off the coast of Venezuela is a sign of a healthy nation? Understand that that video is the United States government bragging. It's the United States government saying, we'll put a boot in your ass, it's the American way. And that brings me back for a moment to the Mizrahi perspective, where there's a direct comparison between the USA's release of the video of the boat and the Israeli government's release of the bombing of that tall building in Gaza City. Both governments are bragging. Both governments are saying, this is what happens when you mess with us. Because both nation states cannot help themselves. They cannot help but lash out while also pretending that everybody else would do the same thing if they could. It reminds me of individuals who come into my comment section and insist that people are inherently selfish and violent. No, your people are selfish and violent. And note that I didn't say the word inherently. It's learned behavior. It's colonial behavior. It's colonized behavior. There are entire societies around the world that were never obsessed with destroying their neighbors. Did people do violence against each other? They sure did. But you were the best at it, weren't you? You were highly technologically advanced. You had the most advanced weaponry. You even had the wheel. You keep bragging in my comment section about how your people gave my people the wheel, as if it justifies your reign of terror around the world. European colonizers were highly advanced murderers. They wrote about it, they bragged about it, and then they said it was God's will. Now finally we can talk about October 7th. Certain commentators said it's Israel's 9/11. That's not a good thing to say, because what's happening now in America is the trauma of 9/11 playing itself out over and over again among a people who insist on considering themselves God's chosen. So give that some thought and have a nice day.